Hello and welcome to Teaching My Cat to Read, the very serious book review podcast. I'm Eli.
I'm Em.
And I'm Lottie. And this week we're discussing everything about Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare.
Or, as my favourite iteration of his name is Willem Shakespeare, because he didn't always used to sign his name the same way because spelling was less formalised back in the day.
It's one of my favourite things about watching people tag it on Tumblr, because everybody's got their own Shakespeare tag, and so many of them are just different ways he spelt his own name.
Yeah, Willem Shakespeare.
That makes me very happy.
It's very charming to me.
We all know who we're talking about.
Yes.
I mean, I tag everything Shakespeare, but that's just me.
Yeah, let's not get into the whole did Shakespeare really write it, because I think we're all firmly on the yes, Shakespeare wrote his own plays.
Anti-Stratfordians can die in a fire, and that is our official position on this.
That's the official position of this podcast, and we're not going to be discussing that anymore.
Right, do we want to do a terrible summary then?
Yeah, terrible summary. My terrible summary is probably two disaster bisexuals accidentally end up married.
I quite like the temporarily fatal consequences of call-out culture myself.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a better romantic comedy than modern rom-coms, and also as a bonus it has no second-hand embarrassment, and that is what I hate about modern rom-coms. So
I don't know that I would say there's no second-hand embarrassment.
Well, the Dogberry exists, right?
That's true. But there again, that was like the comedy section for hundreds of years ago, which I feel, I don't know. Second-hand embarrassment a couple hundred years ago is less second-hand embarrassing than now. Anyway.
Yeah. We've got the benefit of many more years of difference, so it's fine. It's fine.
Shall we go over who the main characters are? I can read out the persons represented at the start of the play from my complete works of William Shakespeare, which has come in handy.
I tried to track down the annotated version I have from GCSE English, which is when I first encountered this as a piece of sort of, like, actually, read it and saw it and stuff.
Do you know what? I think my version of that is probably in this house somewhere, but it didn't occur to me to try and find it, and I left my complete works of Billy Shakes at home, so...
So, main characters. Obviously, the two main characters are the two who end up two of the couples that end up together. Two of the people, the former couple that end up together. One of the couples. Words are hard.
We're already falling down at the first hurdle here. Is like, who are people's names again?
We looked at the lofty heights of Shakespeare's wordsmithing and just tripped over our own feet immediately.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Beatrice and Benedick.
Yes.
The best.
Yes, who are both sworn singletons at the beginning of this, saying they rail against marriage. They say, I would hate to be married. Beatrice is like, I would sooner hear my dog bark at a crow than hear a man swear he loves me. And Benedick is like, oh, I'm a lad, I go out drinking with the lads and I'll never settle with a woman, so on and so forth. One of those was a direct quote, and Benedick's was not.
and he is, so Benedick is the, I guess, favourite. I don't know how you'd put it now, the relationship between Benedick and Don Pedro, who is the Prince of Aragon, assuming Prince of Spain. Yeah, Aragon's in Spain.
He's his boss, really.
Yeah.
But they're also, like, friends, sort of.
Yeah.
Don Pedro trusts Benedick, and they've been on many campaigns together and fought together and whatnot.
And then there's Claudio, who is the, I guess, a younger soldier type.
Sort of a rising
favourite
star.
Of Don Pedro, and then we have Don Don Pedro's bastard brother.
And they have recently reconciled after a period of estrangement at the time of the play.
Yeah.
And he's the villain of the piece. He's the bad guy. And you can tell this because in the Kenneth Branagh version he's played by Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, and also he has black clothing. Like, all of his clothes are black for no reason.
Absolutely stellar performance by Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. And then that little, like, band of, like, Don Pedro, Don John, Claudio and Benedick, are they stopping over at Leonato's?
Yeah, it's like they've just won a war and they've come to stay at their good old friend Signor Leonato, who is Beatrice's uncle. He has a daughter called Hero, who is central to the play but does not get much to do.
Young and naive. And then you've got few other sort of people who are related. There is also in my little list, there's someone called a boy. I was like, you know, when you have like Tree 3 in your school play, I feel this is like Shakespeare's equivalent. What is more annoying? A boy is listed above Beatrice in the list, and I'm like, how? Beatrice is the main character.
I will say that so I think we're going to probably talk about the various adaptations of this later on, but we recently watched the David Tennant, Catherine Tate adaptation, and the boy that you are talking about is absolutely hilarious. He has like one spoken line.
Yeah.
And yet
he just runs around
so
with like
funny.
Rubik's cubes and shit, and punctuating serious moments with very 80s toys.
Like the disdain that only an 8-year-old can dish out. You know,
basically.
of like, why are these adults being such idiots? Which is basically the whole plot, is people are idiots at each other. Someone almost dies, and everyone ends up married because it's a comedy.
Yeah. Basically sums it up.
I mean, I first had this for Year 9 SATs, which are...
back when they did SATs.
Remember
that? Year 9 SATs?
Oh, for those of you who don't know what SATs are, they're exams that every, state school child in England had to sit, and then they use them to rank the schools. And we had to do a Shakespeare, and our Shakespeare was Much Ado. Annoyingly, we did not do it for GCSE. We had to do Othello, and we had to watch the world's worst production of Othello.
I'm so sorry.
Hey, I had Romeo and Juliet for GCSE. I suffered.
Well, I had this, and it was great because they decided we were old enough for them to teach us about the sex jokes. So
nice. One of my funniest memories of school Shakespeare is my sister coming home from having done Romeo and Juliet for the first time. And she had this, I think she was taught it by the same teacher that I was, and she was very like, oh, literature, look at the romance, blah, 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 blah. She's very annoying lady. And she was going on about, Romeo and Juliet being this, like, amazing romantic tragedy. And my sister comes home and is just like, it's just dick jokes. It's just dick jokes. I'm very confused. People keep telling me it's this great tragic romance, and it's like, dick joke.
It's not a romance. It is just a tragedy. I mean, let's do an episode on Romeo and Juliet at some point, I guess. But I have emotions about Romeo and Juliet, and none of them are like, oh, it's so romantic. It's like, it's heartbreaking. It's supposed to be really sad. And I mean, one of the things about Shakespeare's works is that the lines between his tragedies and his comedies can often be very thin. So there is conflict in this play, which is Claudio and Hero are engaged to be married, sort of young idiots in love sort of setup. And Claudio is convinced by Don John and his band of sort of scoundrels. Minions. Yeah, that Hero
that's an adaptation I'd love to see, is that everybody, all of Don John's minions are actual, literal yellow minions.
Incredible. But, like, it's a minion that's supposed to be seducing Hero.
Uh-oh. I didn't think this through.
They managed to convince Claudio that Hero is cheating on him, or the Shakespearean equivalent of talking with a man late at night, so on and so forth, which obviously is, you know, a stand-in for banging someone. And it's not really her. Hero is innocent, but Claudio buys it, denounces her at the altar. She faints in a shock, loads of people leave, and as the classic Shakespeare ploy of, oh, let's give out that she's dead, and let's see what happens if we tell people that she died.
Yeah.
It's a social experiment.
Yeah, what happens is that sort of by the skin of the scenario's teeth, it's say, like, you know, everything shakes out, the deception is uncovered, Claudio and Hero are able to marry at the end of the play, which I personally hate. I don't think she should take him back, because he was an absolute turd to her, and there is an adaptation where that happens, and I really like it.
Ooh.
Yeah. But if that, you know, for want of a nail, the scenario in this play could have gone horribly wrong. Beatrice and Benedick never end up together or whatever. You could very easily imagine that scenario taking place. And that's the kind of thing that he does with his tragedies as well, as you can see the situation unfolding, you're powerless to stop it, and you can see the train wreck incoming.
Yeah.
Which is what I think is actually Romeo and Juliet is sort of all about, is, you know, you can see how this is all going to end in tears.
Yeah.
It's all going to end in a bit of a shit show, yeah.
And there are so many ways it could have been averted, and if it had been, it would be a comedy and not a tragedy. In sort of playwright terms.
In comedies, you listen to the women and you avert the train wreck.
Yeah, there's a phenomenal Tumblr post that goes around about how in Shakespeare, women's agency and the actions of the male characters, sort of, if they listen to the women and take on board their advice and their wisdom, will determine the outcome of the play. So, for example, a pivotal moment in this is Benedick siding with Hero and Beatrice, and choosing to believe
which
that
Hero's
she was
own
wronged.
father doesn't even do.
Exactly.
I know.
Which infuriates me.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it is like a quote-unquote product of its time, if that is the right use of the phrase. But yeah, like, I mean, for me, I definitely feel I love the first half of the play a lot more than the second half. Basically, as in the first half prior to Claudio and Hero, like, going up to the altar, and then Claudio's like, I don't want to marry you. You're, like, unpure or whatever. And everyone's like, wah! And then she, quote-unquote, dies. Prior to that, mainly because of all the puns and the wordplay, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, my personal favourite bit of this entire play, I think, is in like is it the second or third scene where Beatrice and Benedick just turn up and just start having just a battle of wits, and just the takedowns, the takedowns of each other are brutal. They're brutal. You could use them now if you're getting picked on, and just like, yeah, screw you, I don't like you.
I love the line where she's somebody is describing him to her and sort of not realising that she already knows him quite well, and she's just roasting him even though he's not there. And there's a line where she says, last time we spoke 4 of his 5 wits went halting off, and now is the whole man governed with 1. I just thought, how evocative. That's so you know, it's brutal, and I love it. And they end up married.
I personally love the one where the messenger basically is talking about Benedict, and he says, and he's a good soldier to lady, and then Beatrice replies, and a good soldier to a lady. I was like,
well, if we're gonna talk about their relationship, there's a bit later in the play where Don Pedro has proposed to Beatrice, and whether or not you read that as actually a romantic proposal or a let's just be bastards together and, you know, have fun.
Yeah, if neither of us are married by the time we're 40.
Not actual bastards, not Don John bastards. But afterwards, he's talking to her, she turns him down, and he's talking to her about Benedick, and he says to her, you've lost the heart of Signor Benedick. And she goes, yeah, he lent it to me once a while, and I gave him use for it, a double heart for his single one. Marry, he once won it of me with false dice, therefore you may as well say that I've lost it. And it's like, that's never expounded upon, and it's this line that implies that they had a relationship before, but like, it's never referenced anywhere else. It's not referenced by her uncle, by Hero. Nobody else brings it up. So, like, was it a secret? It blows my mind.
At the start, they do say that they had met each other before, and there was something
they've known each other for ages.
They send each other letters, so I remember my teacher picking that point up and then just drilling into it so much it was awkward. It was like, no, it's just this one offhand reference, but I guess in these times, what would have a relationship been? Like, I guess walking about together a bit? Like, you're not exactly going to go on a date to the cinema, are you? You know?
Well, courting, raising the expectations of the other person that something more serious might come of it. So my take on it is that actually they did court once, and something happened to ruin it that leaves Beatrice thinking that Benedick was false to her, had won her heart with false dice, and equally that, you know, Benedick is left thinking that she's an awful person, and we just don't get to know what that is. We don't get to know what that history is between them, except that they now make a great show of despising each other. But obviously, as is sort of this famous saying that the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference, and love and hate are far closer than you might think.
Yeah. Well, it's very, I tell you what it reminds me of a little is the Darcy-Lizzie sparring before they realise that the other is probably a decent person, actually. And it's not that there's not a, I don't know how to put it exactly, but it is the drift compatible thing, isn't it? It's like, they argue well together, even before there's any, like, any understanding, you know? There is, like, you know, I could argue with you for the rest of my life. That's cool. Yeah. We've got this. We could go on forever like this.
Like, their ability to get under each other's skin is so well portrayed. And it makes it, like, you know, it really supports the fact that they actually mean a lot to each other, even when they're at odds.
It's a really interesting one, because I feel like Claudio and Hero are like, I mean, Lottie was talking earlier about modern rom-coms, and I feel like most modern rom-coms want what Beatrice and Benedick have, but what they end up doing is very Claudio and Hero. It's always, it's love at first sight. We don't really understand why these two people are into each other, except that they're both young and hot, I guess. There's a miscommunication, probably because they don't actually know each other that well. There's massive drama that makes it look like they're not going to get together, and then they get together. And, like, meanwhile, everybody's sitting there rooting for Beatrice and Benedick, who clearly, like, get each other on some level. They've got a history, they've got an existing relationship. We can believe, from what they show us, that they could go over the length of this play from being sparring partners to being married, you know. It's but it's all very subtle. All of their character work, and all of that, like Eli was saying, they sketch in this entire history with the lines that Eli mentioned. I think when we first see them actually banter with each other, Beatrice ends with, "You always end with a jade's trick. I know you of old."
And it's this weirdly bitter line.
Yeah. I have seen it played less bitter, but generally speaking, I think they do. Most adaptations lean into. Beatrice is actually a bit pissed about whatever this is.
Yeah. There's something uncomfortable there.
And Benedick doesn't get a chance to defend himself.
Yeah.
I guess Beatrice's position, though, her position as a woman, again, sort of going back to, I guess, Persuasion and even Pride and Prejudice, her position is much more reliant on marriage than, say, Benedick. Like, it doesn't matter if he marries. But what I did love is when Claudio goes to Benedick, and they're literally, I mean, I made a note, is you've seen her and 20 seconds later you've fallen in love with her, WTF. And then Benedick just goes in this absolute takedown of Claudio. And so Claudio's just like doing this romantic thing saying, oh, can the world buy such a jewel? And Benedick's like, yay, and a case to put it into. Like, he's like, get over yourself. You're not in love with her. You met her 20 seconds ago. And then Don Pedro is sort of supporting this sort of young love, and it's always romantic. Oh, yes, I will go and get her father's permission. And in none of this is anyone going, what's Hero's opinion? I know she can't really have an opinion. Like, she doesn't have that agency at this time. But it just, watching it now, I'm just like, she has an opinion too, guys. You know,
it's interesting you say that, because I think that Don Pedro's reaction of, yes, I will immediately jump on board this ship and encourage it, is partly because he likes Claudio and he wants Claudio to have nice things, considering Hero to be a thing, right? Or marriage to her, you know. But it's also to annoy Benedick.
Yeah.
Like, he actually goes all in to piss off Benedick, who is like foaming at the mouth at this turn of events. And it really isn't about Hero. Like, as you say, Hero is not actually a person in that narrative, in that decision to them.
And it's interesting as well that I think this kind of sets up foreshadows, I guess, maybe, the position we end up in the second half, where Benedick is on Beatrice and Hero's side, and Don Pedro and Claudio are both, they're acting the way they're supposed to act, right? They're acting according to society, and maybe I don't know that much about what the expectation of a romance plot was at the time, but it's very like, you know, Claudio and Hero, love at first sight, miscommunication, get together, blah. They are both reacting to the news of Hero's so-called betrayal in a very sort of traditional, toxic masculinity, you know, cuckolding is the worst thing you can do to a guy.
They're following the narrative.
Of course we don't listen to the woman, outrageous. The fact that those two are the ones that fall for it, and just go wholeheartedly ahead of it and don't question, is set up perfectly by the fact that they're both immediately on board with the whole, yes, of course you can marry someone you've just met. That makes perfect sense. And Benedick is sitting there being the voice of realism, going, hold on a second, ask some questions, think about this for 2 seconds, and I think it's interesting that is what allows him to be like, actually, wait, I'm going to see what Beatrice has to say about this. I'm going to see what Hero has to say about this.
Something I've been wanting to say for a couple minutes is that, so you have this central, not even miscommunication, because Hero isn't even trying to communicate, this deception that relies on Claudio not trusting Hero. Like, fundamentally, it relies on him not believing her.
Yeah.
And Benedick and Beatrice, at no point, actually, distrust each other. At no point do they believe that the other is actually dealing with them unfairly.
Yeah.
You have this one moment after Benedick and Beatrice like confess to each other, where she delivers some of the best dialogue in any play that I can think of. She asks him to kill Claudio, and he says like, I can't do that. He's one of my best friends. You know, no matter what he's done, you know, I don't think I can just straight up like kill the dude or challenge him to a duel and thereby kill him because I'm better than him. And that is the moment of, I think, the most conflict between them, true conflict, because Beatrice goes, oh, well, then you don't love me. because you would do this thing for me if you loved me. But it's not that she thinks he's lied to her, it's that she thinks, or various interpretations of what she's saying in that scene, but it's that she thinks that he doesn't love her enough, not that he has lied to her. Yeah. Whereas Claudio and Hero have, and because they met each other 2 seconds ago, can't have that kind of trust, can't know each other's character.
They don't have that backstory, that sort of, that previous relationship where, even though their banter is quite brutal to each other, I think they know that the other can take it. Like, they don't do it to anyone else in this entire play. Like, they could, I think it shows how witty they are. And at the start, they have this brutal takedown of each other, which they could do to other people to the similar extent. And they don't. They use wordplay and they use wit, but not in the same, like, brutal manner. Yeah. Like, when Beatrice comes out and he says, oh, will you give me any service? I will go... And he basically, Benedict is talking about, I will go and do anything rather than have a 3-word conversation with this harpy. And it's just so mean.
I will say there is a moment when I think Benedict does seem to be hurt by Beatrice's words, and it's when at the masked ball, he is in disguise, and they speak to each other with Beatrice not knowing, or very sort of boldly pretending not to know that Benedict is who he is. And so she's either roasting him to his face and pretending that she doesn't know who he is, or she is genuinely just saying to some random person that she doesn't know who it is, by the way, I totally hate this dude Benedict, do you know him? He's a dick. And Benedict comes away from that going, oh wow, she really doesn't like me. And it's this interesting thing where it does feel to me like there's a mismatch between what he thought was happening between them and what Beatrice thinks is happening between them. Unless you take the reading that she knew it was Benedict, she thought he knew it was him, and that they've just misjudged the joke to each other. Yeah, that's my preferred reading of it, because I think it's a little bit less unkind. But
I quite like the idea that she's doing it on purpose, partially because it means he can't answer back, and I think it's interesting that the one time we see them, I think, well, no, I mean it depends on your interpretation, but generally, I think this is the one time when we see them have that sort of banter and that kind of slagging each other off. And Benedict, because of the whole pretending not to be himself thing, isn't in a position to answer back. And it's interesting to me that is the time where his feelings seem to be genuinely hurt. Is the time when he can't... There's no balance to it.
Yes,
in order to keep playing the role.
Yeah,
he can't. It can't be repartee. It has to be one-sided.
Suddenly they're not equals anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to go back to that idea of like giving it back, because I think you were saying that like, she doesn't have that with anyone else in the play. And I don't think it's for lack of trying, because we see her have conversations, but not where she's not going after people. But she's saying strident things. She's saying opinionated, witty things. And you see people just shrug it off. Like her having a conversation with Hero and with Leonato in a scene, talking about why she doesn't want to get married and why she thinks marriage is a fucked up institution and all of this. And nobody's giving it back to her. Nobody's actually engaging with her on it.
Yeah, nobody's
They're just saying, you'll
her.
change your mind when you meet the right guy, blah, blah, blah. Nobody's engaging at all with it. They're just going, it's just Beatrice. Look at Beatrice being an old maid and a shrew and bitter and and nobody's taking it on the level that she's presenting it. Nobody's interacting with her the way she wants and needs. Nobody's challenging her intellectually, They're just sitting there being like, it's Beatrice again, and that sucks.
Yeah, I think Benedict is honestly one of the few who appreciates her wit, apart from Don Pedro.
Yeah.
I think I like the interpretation that Don Pedro and Beatrice are friends, and like just they like
they're bros.
Joke together and make fun of Benedict together, and like.
Yeah. I think that the bit where Leonato, Antonio, and they're talking to Beatrice, and she's just putting them down of, they're basically, like you're saying, when you find a husband, it will be great. And I just love her reply, especially, we're going to talk about the adaptations. I do have a soft spot for the 1993 version.
Yeah.
But I think Emma Thompson plays it beautifully when they say, will you go to hell? And she says... No to the gate, the devil will meet me and say, get you to heaven, Beatrice, because why are you here? Just because you're not married doesn't mean you're a terrible person. Go to heaven and find the bachelors. And I just love that, because it just...
She's so clever.
She's just so clever of getting herself out of the situation, but also making a very valid point. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Why am I going to hell just because I don't have a husband? I've got all these other virtues kicking around here. Just being a nice human.
Yeah.
Like, generally being a nice being. And yet, because I do not have a man and I'm not wedded to someone, suddenly it's a bad thing. And I just love how Emma Thompson plays that line in the adaptation. It makes me very happy.
And I think this goes back a little bit to what I was saying about Benedick's cynicism earlier. It's something that he has in common with Beatrice. Like, I think both of them, like, overplay it a little in the first instance, and I think you could very well argue that's to do with prior experience. But they're both saying, look, you guys have all swallowed this hook, line, and sinker. Can we maybe take a minute? Can we think about this for 2 seconds? Can we think about what I actually want?
And when you say they overplay it, I mean, it's probably also, there's that phenomenon of, if you are the only person saying something in a sea of other people who are just not, you know, it's like, so at the time of recording, we've just had Christmas, and I've been going full out Jewish because everything around me is Christian at the moment. And so if they're stuck in this sea of people going, marriage is good and great, and the only thing that a woman should seek to do in their lives, and, you know, the mark of a man having settled down, and both of them are going, actually, I disagree with this. Of course you're going to be loud about it because you're the only voice saying that.
You have to go overboard because otherwise people don't listen. You know, or you have to go overboard to the extent where it's funny, because otherwise what do you even do with that? I think
humor is a defense.
I was really struck by the conversation that she has where she's saying, oh, you know, why do I need a husband? And everybody's just going, oh, it's just Beatrice being ridiculous again. How many of us have had that conversation? How many, like, I have had that conversation. People, oh, you'll change your mind, you know. Oh, when you meet the right one, suddenly you'll experience romantic attraction, or you'll want kids, or all of this. And it's, like, that might very well be true, but it's incredibly hurtful at the time to hear when you're saying, no, this is what I think. I am a full human being with an independent will, to quote a Bronte, and this is my carefully considered opinion. And even if it wasn't, you wouldn't have the right to come in here and just go, oh, it's just M being a spoilsport, or it's just M being a cynical bitch. It's like, no, M has an opinion, M has a brain, you know, and it's, I relate to it, if you couldn't tell.
Like, Beatrice is saying, I'm not broken, and the response from people around her is to say, don't worry, you'll get fixed sooner or later.
Rage.
Yeah. The entire setup between Beatrice and Benedick, I don't know if you want to talk about that, like how they are effectively... I mean, I watched the 1993 adaptation recently, and in that it kind of comes across as, well, we've got nothing to do in the week between this party that we're at the moment, this masked party, and when Claudia and Hero get married. So let's play Cupid and get Beatrice and Benedick together because that sounds like fun. And it kind of came across as a bit of a sort of primary school, oh, you like him and he likes you, let's get you together. And it was just a bit funny that coming across in a Shakespeare play.
Yeah, I mean, I have mixed feelings about that whole plan, because in some ways it seems quite mean-spirited. That they're just like, oh, these two people both hate marriage. Wouldn't it be funny if they ended up together with no thought for what that would do to them? And, you know, what if it had worked on one of them and not the other? Like, the potential of that plan for causing a lot of hurt is monumental, and it's phenomenally lucky that it doesn't end that way.
Yeah. I tell you what I would really like to see an adaptation do, and I don't think I have ever seen it, is play it like Don Pedro and all the other schemers don't actually expect it to succeed, and that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
I think I got that vibe from the David Tennant version, actually.
Oh, interesting, because I very much, at least from maybe Hero, and I think they replaced Leonato's brother with, like, Hero's mother in that one, I think. You get more women. But I definitely got the vibe that Hero, at least, was kind of like, this could work out.
Well, Hero might be one of the few people who knows whatever it was that happened all those years ago between the two of them.
That's a good point, yeah.
And I think it kind of comes across as a bit of, oh, if somebody, like, gave them a nudge, it would end up, and I think that's kind of classic rom-com, even just modern rom-coms now, is in the real world, that's a dumb idea and it's stupid. Like, it's like, you know, the trope of the man stands outside in the rain waiting and then she comes down and they fall in. And it's like, actually, if that happened in real life, it's just plain creepy. Like, you don't want someone standing outside your door for 5 hours. Just no. In the same way, kind of, in this, because it's a quote-unquote rom-com, it all works out in the end, so it's fine. But in the real world, you just don't do that, like, without prior consultation of said friend. Like, do you want our assistance?
You know what this is? It's an early iteration of There's Only One Bed, isn't there? It's like, we have to put them, or, you know, locked in, stuck in an elevator, or it's like, we've pushed these two people together because they have potential and you want to see what happens. Whoops, they fell in love, too late.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, like, of all the people in the play who should be trying to, like, engineer romance, Claudio and Don Pedro are no, absolutely not. They are idiots and should not be allowed near women.
Like, that whole, I think one of the things that really struck me, and I don't think I picked this up the first few times I watched this, but particularly on my most recent watching, the Don Pedro going to woo Hero in Claudio's stead.
It's bizarre to me.
Is just so unnecessary.
It's an excuse to have Claudio show his paranoia. And his readiness to believe that he's been betrayed.
That's true,
and I guess also kind of, I say naivety. It's so just after at the start of the play, and Claudio sees Hero and goes, "Oh my God, she's pretty. I want to marry her." And then Don Pedro says, "Yeah, I'll go and woo in your name." It's for me, it gave the impression of Claudio is not very experienced. He is young, and that is, I mean, he is a lot younger than Don Pedro, and so Don Pedro will go and woo in Claudio's name. But at the same time, it's like, well, that's still put Hero in a very difficult position, because there's a line, I think it was definitely the 1993 version, I don't know if it's in the play or not, if it's sort of added in, where Leonardo says to Hero, "If the prince doth ask you, you know what your answer is."
Yeah, no, that's in it, yeah.
That is in the original text.
And it's kind of going, you know, she doesn't have an opinion. You know, if the prince asks to marry her, she has to say yes. So if he is wooing in Claudio's name and she thinks it's the prince and she said yes to the prince, and actually she's like, "Ha, I'm doing this for Claudio," like...
I don't think that's how it's supposed to have gone down between the two of them. I think it is the prince going to Hero and saying, "My friend Claudio thinks that you're very beautiful and wishes to marry you. Let me say some nice words to you on his behalf." I don't think he is wooing, like, I don't think there's any deception involved in the wooing in Claudio's name aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also worth saying that when we see them at the start of the play, that is not the first time that Hero and Claudio have met. There is a line where Claudio says, "I saw her before we went to war and I looked with a soldier's eye and I liked, but now the war is over and I can love her."
Yeah.
So there's a little more between them. But,
it is a little more. It's more just the fact that Hero doesn't really have an opinion in the matter. Like, she has no agency of herself, in contrast to Beatrice, who is so outspoken, because that gives her agency. People are like, "Oh, nobody's going to come and love you if you know, keep like saying all these quote unquote outrageous things and witty things and putting people down." And actually that gives, I feel that gives Beatrice a sense of agency. You know, that means, okay, well, if these people don't like me because I say witty things and punny things and, you know, make people feel uncomfortable, then great, I don't want to marry them. I don't want to go with that person.
I'd be really interested to see something that presented her as more of a foil to Don John. Because one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about this,
I'll be a canker in the hedge.
Yeah, it's the kind of like, I can't be anything other than I am, right? I can't be anything other than this, somebody who says outrageous things, and like, and I think there's an element of that in the actual script, as it's saying, is like, you know, you were born under a happy star, like it's her fate, it's her character, she can't not be as she is, and that's and that's why she, like, why people regard her the way that they do, but it's also what gets her the ending that she wants and deserves in the end. And I think that's a very interesting contrast to Don John's I can't fake this speech, you know, that I must eat when I have stomach and laugh at no man's leisure.
Yeah, I was going to say that. He is a villain.
You know, cry when I am sad, and, you know, and I one of the things I like the 93 adaptation for is the fact that it makes that's actually quite a sympathetic speech in that production.
Again, Keanu Reeves kills it.
I think in the David Tennant and Catherine Tate one, Don John is just very skeevy the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's unlikable.
And it's much less relatable. But I'd be interested to see an adaptation play with that kind of... that thing where you can't... What you are is not what society wants or expects. And you have to... And it's whether you make the decision to try and play along, whether you can play along, and what that does to you as a person. I feel like that is a parallel that I don't see, like, played with enough in adaptations.
I just wanted to add the parallel between... the difference between Beatrice and Hero with regards, like, having agency and being listened to. So Leonardo says to Hero, oh, you know what your answer must be if the prince woos you. And later that night, Beatrice turns down the prince, who is wooing on his own behalf to her.
Yes, that's a very good point. Yeah,
that is true. Yeah.
Whether or not you view that as romantic, that here is an incredibly powerful man who's well respected, friends with her family, could give her a nice life, an incredible marriage for her, politically, materially, and she turns him down because that's not what she wants.
Yeah.
And it sort of reminds me, it's not that similar, but of Lizzie turning down Mr. Collins, a marriage that would help her.
Yeah.
And, it is not certain you will ever be made another offer of marriage type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because she couldn't do it in good conscience,
Yeah. It's one of the things that I like about the play versus Pride and Prejudice. I do feel like, I don't know about you guys, I never really get a sense, either from the script or from any adaptation that I've seen, that when Don Pedro asks Beatrice, she's not in an insecure position.
No.
You don't really get from her the vibe at all that, like, this is something that she needs in order to live comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
No.
It never comes across as a financial or economic necessity that she marry. And everybody's going on at her about how she'll change her mind. They're all saying that in the sense of, you'll want to... you don't want to be lonely, you'll find the right guy, you'll have kids, blah. Not...
You need it for money.
We'll chuck you out on the streets to starve.
Yeah, exactly.
If you continue to be an economic burden on us. Which is something that I think... Yeah, it changes that dynamic a little. I wanted to talk about the Don Pedro and the proposal a bit more, because, like, it's something that it didn't occur to me until I saw the David Tennant and Catherine Tate one that was something that you could play differently. I always read it as a kind of, if we're both single by the time we're 40, I think we'd have fun. We're in cahoots. Shenanigans,
Yeah, we could be old married
couple,
grumps together.
Yeah, exactly.
We could survive and not throttle each other.
Yeah.
And maybe run a household together kind of thing.
I do think that one of the things that, because in the David Tennant, Catherine Tate one, it's played like he's either genuinely interested or at least genuinely hurt that she said no, which given his, like, whole thing about, like, the fact that he sides with Claudio instantly and is horrible to Hero and all of this, like, it's possibly that it's just about being a guy who somebody said no to and not about him genuinely being interested in Beatrice. But that was something that adaptation really changes, and I think is maybe more consistent with how the prince behaves in the second half.
Okay, yeah.
Because, like, we've already seen that he's the kind of guy who, he expected her to say yes. He doesn't, what's the word? Yeah, he doesn't, like, he's hurt and he's grumpy. And he doesn't take it very well.
His pride is wounded.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I guess he would never be in a position where someone would turn him down.
Yeah.
He's probably brought up in this idea that he's going to be you are someone to marry them, they'll probably say yes.
Yeah.
Which makes him asking her a really big deal. Because then, if he asks her, expecting her to say yes, he is genuinely then saying, let's get married.
Yeah.
Like, he can't ask people that as a joke, being who he is.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I think is that playing it this way, it makes a lot more sense for Don Pedro to side with Claudio.
Okay.
Because he's scorned.
If his conception of this whole thing is women are lucky that we ask them and you don't expect them to say no, and when something in this arrangement goes wrong, the most important thing is my damaged ego and not the fact that I have the power to utterly destroy this woman's life.
That is a good point. Yeah, I never thought of that.
And I feel like the Don Pedro who asks Beatrice in a, like, you're my bro and I think we do all right, The Don Pedro of the 93 adaptation, in my head at least, it makes a lot less sense that he immediately goes, oh, let's be super vindictive about the whole we think heroes cheating thing. Let's denounce her on her wedding in public so that her entire life is ruined. The guy that is like, I will gently accept Beatrice's soft no on the whole platonic bros forever request is not the guy that's like, actually, yes, the sensible way to resolve this problem is to just, without asking any further questions, destroy this woman in a public place.
So my recollection, and I haven't seen it recently, of the Kenneth Branagh adaptation with Denzel Washington as Don Pedro is not, he's less vindictive. He is less than in, it's sort of, so it's Claudio's idea that they should denounce her at the altar, and Don Pedro's sort of like, I'm not sure about this, but I don't really know how else to handle this, and, you know, you're the one who's been wronged, so he is less a driving force of that plan. And
I think it's kind of his own honour is
at stake. Well, he brokered that match, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think I was going to say, just comparing the different adaptations. I mean, we've been talking about a lot about the 1993 version with Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson, and then the, when was it, 2011?
11.
12?
That sounds right, yeah.
Yeah.
11.
Adaptation with David Tennant and Catherine Tate, which I feel very lucky to have gone and seen. I think that play just like made me so happy. Mainly because I finally appreciated what the hell a soliloquy is for. Like, I felt like at school you kind of read the play and it's just very two-dimensional, and then you watch a film or you watch a play and you watch a good adaptation, like not a... When you watch a bad adaptation of Shakespeare, it is dull. If you watch a really good play of it, like this one, I don't know if we can link it somewhere on our Tumblr if other people want to go watch it, but it's so good, and it gives you that story, and you don't have to sit there thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about because they're speaking in Shakespearean English. Like, it's just really good. They're both good.
And the physical comedy is amazing in that adaptation as well.
Yes,
like,
yes,
you know, Kenneth
Branagh,
you have him falling through the deck chair, whatever, but the physical comedy, the paint scenes.
Oh, I forgot about the paint scene. I love that. It was so
absolutely hysterical.
Just like, and then when that scene's over and he comes out and she's just like, love me.
Yes,
and he's
up
covered
and down
in paint.
himself, covered in paint and like hungover, and just like he's like, why?
And it's something where if you, so like, you know, I studied this for GCSE and we read the play, we read the text. Obviously, none of that's in the text. So it makes you really wonder what other stagings have done throughout history. Like, what were they doing non-verbally to help, like, to augment this story and make it funnier and flesh out the characters and do all kinds of different things with them.
Yeah, I've got to say that was the thing that like changed, that this adaptation changed for me and how I think about like theatre in general and Shakespeare in particular. Is it hadn't occurred to me until I saw this one just how much is in the staging. Just how much is in the acting. I kind of gotten the like, oh, I found this play quite boring until I saw people do it, or it's easier to understand when you see people do it. But like there are points where you go, this has changed the entire... There's a whole arc here that has been changed without any of the words being changed, just by the way that you've staged it. So the, like, Don Pedro being serious about asking Beatrice to marry him, for example. Like, the lines aren't different. The lines are exactly the same, but it's a completely different subplot in the hands of that adaptation to the way it's handled in something else.
And like Dogberry, who we've avoided talking about because he kind of sucks, but I would cut Dogberry if I was adapting this, basically. But Dogberry in the David Tennant one is actually not excruciating to watch. It's actually kind of endearing. Whereas the Kenneth Branagh one, it's just, I just sort of close my eyes and think of England throughout the
I remember when I first watched the Kenneth Branagh adaptation, and I found like Beatrice and Benedick incredibly funny. I laughed my way through it at like 13, and then get to Dogberry, and it's... I remember my teacher at school saying, like, oh, this would be the quote-unquote comedy section of the play. And I'm just sitting there thinking, but this entire thing's meant to be a comedy. We've already been laughing of, like, the wit between Beatrice and Benedict. And you're saying this 3-minute interlude in the middle. And what it felt like to me is...
Was 3 hours? Same.
No. It's a little bit in the middle. It just felt like the intermission music in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, you can tune out now for 3 minutes while Dogberry does his thing and then the play moves on. Like, it's not important to the plot. And I you don't need it there.
I wonder what we're missing as a modern audience, though. Because there must have been something that made it funnier.
Yeah, we must be missing something.
Yeah, it's in conversation with something, isn't it?
Yeah.
There must be some... Maybe it was like a pastiche of something else that was going on at the time that we just lost the context for. And I'm sure there are articles out there about this that I'm too lazy to go and read.
I mean, send us an email if you know actually why that is funny, quote unquote, you know. Please tell us.
Or if you also just hate it. Solidarity.
Yeah, solidarity. But it's one of those things where, I mean, slight tangent of bashing school English lessons, but you don't get that discussion at school. You can't say,
you can't just
really
say, I hate this, actually.
I hate this bit. It's pointless. I like this other bit over here. Because all you have to do is go to the specification and be like, here's a quote from Act 1, Scene 1. They say this thing. This is a metaphor. This is a... Like, it's very, very bland. Or at least it was for my English lessons. So, yeah, I would recommend if you're finding it bland, just go and watch some adaptations of it and then, put your own spin on it. Like, that's the whole point of...
It reminds me of I don't know what movie it's from, and this is a gift set that goes around on Tumblr of an English classroom, and it's this teenage class reading...
the takedown of On the Road.
On the Road. And one student says... I didn't like it. It was boring. I only got like 20 pages in. I hated it. It doesn't make sense. And the teacher's like, well, that's a rubbish analysis. And then when, it's like the girl's like, oh, he was on, it's like, you couldn't understand a word he was saying. And another girl jumps in, oh, actually, no, that's a great analysis. He was on a lot of drugs when he wrote On the Road in like 2 weeks. And, it is really dry and basically goes through why this other girl's sort of, her response to the book is actually super justified and if you read something and you hate it, there's probably reasons why you hate it that you can put into an essay.
Like, you're not wrong.
And so the fact that we, in formal study of literature in school, aren't really allowed to follow that instinct really sucks.
Yeah, you kind of have to go, this is what the play is. And I remember my teacher talking about some of the innuendo in the play, but in such an awkward way that... It didn't come across as actually when I was watching the adaptation earlier this week, I was going, some of this is like borderline, like innuendo you find in a Disney film to keep the parents occupied for the kids' film. Like, it's quite obvious. It is quite obvious, but the teacher just like, oh, we'll just skim over that bit because, it's not important.
To be fair, you were 13. Like, what teacher...
Well, that is true, but like...
Not from a moral purity perspective, but from a sympathy for the teacher perspective. Do you really want to have to go into all of that with 13-year-olds?
I mean, probably not, but I think it kind of... I think it was for the fact... Because she brought it up and then said nothing more, we were all like...
That's fair. Yeah.
Well, is everything an innuendo? Because we couldn't spot it, right?
Pretty much is the answer.
It was just like, just don't put it up in the first place.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
You can't talk... I mean, we have managed to do a podcast episode now on Much Ado About Nothing without really talking about the sex jokes, but there's lots of them. You can look them up. There's going to be loads of Spark Notes, like, articles out there on the sex jokes and Much Ado. They're mostly pretty great. But yeah, having said that, we are now getting towards the end of the time that we have to talk about this play.
Our time limit.
Who would you fight?
Claudio.
You would eat his heart in the marketplace?
Yep. I just like it. It's sweet of Benedick out of friendship to like be like hesitate a little, but like if any of us were in that play, and Beatrice wouldn't even have to ask.
Rip to Silio Montanto, like, but I'm different.
He's dead now. He's already dead. So he didn't even have to ask. He's gone. The moment he opened his mouth, just stabbed. Yeah. That's it. That's the end.
In it, yeah.
Actually, I would also fight Leonardo just as a wild card option because that's your kid. That's your kid. Do better.
It's like, I just want to be projected down into that and be like, what are you doing? What are you thinking? This is your child.
Yeah.
Angry noises.
I agree with both of these. I think it depends on the adaptation. I probably would fight Don John. I don't think I would fight Keanu Reeves Don John, but I would fight the one from the David Tennant, Catherine Tate, who I keep thinking is Jeremy Strong, but he's not played by Jeremy Strong.
You know what? I have the same thing with him as I do with Mr. Collins. I don't want to touch him. He's too sleazy.
Yeah.
It's just we need to get the pole back.
Yes, yeah.
Another question is, where would you drop an F-bomb in this play? If you had one F-bomb to drop.
Oh, I would eat his heart in the marketplace, obviously.
Okay, fair enough. I think I'd have to give it to Beatrice. It just doesn't matter where. Beatrice gets the F-bomb somewhere.
I don't know. I feel like it would do a lot to redress the injustice towards Hero if Hero got the F-bomb. I think she deserves it.
Well, okay, but is this an adaptation where she takes them back or not?
No. This is when they go, oh, you know, here is the niece that's the spitting image of my daughter that's dead. Yeah. Will you marry her? Blah, blah, blah. And Claudio's like, yep, I'll do it, definitely. And Hero takes off the veil and is just like, no.
Yeah, thank you. I quite like the idea of Benedick going, there is nothing I love so much in this world as much as you. It's not that strange. And Beatrice just goes...
See, I thought you were going to say, there's nothing in this world I love so well as you. Is that not strange?
So true.
Yeah. Lots of opportunities.
Many opportunities.
Yeah. What do you think the cat would give this?
Ooh.
There is a lot of intrigue. There is a lot of there is crime. There is actual crime and there's sneaking around. There is sneaking around.
Yeah.
But there is a lack of actual cats, which I feel Shakespeare's missed something.
Well, we don't know.
Well, there could have been that in a staging.
Like, depending on where it's set, it might be one of those, it might be like, you know, one of those sort of Greek, actually it's Aragon, so it's probably Spain, right? But, you know, could be a place with just like lots of semi-tame wild cats hanging around, just, you know. I'm thinking of the Kenneth Branagh adaptation where the opening scene is them on this sort of like mountaintop type place. You could imagine some cats hanging out there, sunning themselves.
Cats, yeah.
I've got to say, there are a lot of people in this play that deserve to get stabbed, that do not get stabbed, and I feel like Gothmog would have a problem with that.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7 out of 10 for Gothmog. She is actually right here with me as I'm talking, but she's asleep, so I'm not going to disturb her.
Oh, I'd say 7.5.
Yeah, fair enough. You think that's fair, Gothmog? 7.5.
See, I would go 6. So, because there is no murder. I don't think she's got a lot of patience for witty banter. And again, lots of people deserve to get clawed and do not. And I think she would find that deeply frustrating.
Oh, I thought that was a bonus, that she could maybe do that clawing.
Oh, that's a good point. No, I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
She's just woken up and shown me all of her teeth, so I don't know I don't know how to interpret that. Anyway, we are rambling.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
I don't think we have to come up with a conclusive cat rating. All right. In the brief amount of time that we have got left, what else are people reading at the moment?
I mean, I've just been rewatching Lord of the Rings films, not doing much reading, so that's what I've been doing.
Very valid.
Oh, I finished Watchmaker of Filigree Street. It's amazing. I love it a lot. There is a clockwork octopus. That's all you need to know. There is a clockwork octopus, and it's amazing. Yeah, so that was good. I started A Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which is living up to the Night Circus hype. If you were into Erin Morgenstern's The Night Circus, you will love this. It is delightful. And weird, which I appreciate in a book.
I got myself the Marie Kondo book, The Art of Tidying, and I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to stick to the framework that she lays out in that, because that's something that I would really like to have, is a tidy house. It's written really charmingly, so I'm actually really enjoying reading that. Woo! All right. What are we reading next time? Temeraire, is it not?
Yeah, Temeraire with the cat. So yeah, thank you all for listening. Please like, subscribe, review, add us on Twitter. We're on Instagram. And you can find all the links for this on our website, which I think is in the description box below. Send us an email, teachingmycattoread@gmail.com. Add hello there so we know you're not spam. But yeah, say hello, send us a message, and recommend us some books to read. Big virtual hugs, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
Bye!